one of the survivors of the tragedy that happened in 1958 in Mount Baldy.
I'm a survivor. I'm not gonna give up. I'm not gonna stop her. I'm gonna work harder.
Okay, hello, my name is Raphael. I'm 76 years old, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Boy Scout tragedy of 1958. It began on a Tuesday evening when Mike Early approached the Scoutmaster and inquired if he could organize a hike, because it had been quite a while since we had been on troop-wise. The Scoutmaster said, yeah, that'd be a great idea, and announced to the troop that anyone who would like to go on this hike to meet with Mike Early, and he would give him the information. So there were 10 of us that were going to go on this hike. Ultimately, 6 of us were at counting Mike Early, were at Mike Early's house. 3 of the boys were around the corner and out of sight, and we had no idea they were there, so they missed the hike. The 10th boy was not allowed to go by his mother. So we all got into Mr. Early's old Studebaker. It actually looked like the Studebaker that they had in the Muppet movies, almost the same kind of car. It was interesting. It took about 2 hours to drive to Madera Canyon, because that was the I-19 did not exist in those days. So we arrived at the Santa Rita Lodge about noon, close to noon, and we get out of the car, and then John Early then drove away, and I thought it was unusual. I expected him to stay with us, but being 12 years old, it was not a problem. So we gathered up our gear and we walked another mile up to the trailhead with our backpacks and bedrolls, and it was quite warm. It was uncomfortably hot. So we set up our base camp, and we paired off in 2, and 2. Close together, but we've been paired off. I was with Mike Lanou, and the 2 older boys, Mike Early and Lou Burgess, were together, and the 2 youngest, David Greenberg and Ronnie Sepulveda. Yeah, around 1:15, Mike Early said, let's start on our hike. His intent was to go to the top of what we call Mount Baldy, and sign the logbook because it was his birthday. It was also David Greenberg's birthday. And today I know that you can't make that hike starting at 1:15 in November. It's just too far to go. It's probably a 5-hour hike at best. So we started the trail anyway, and we got about just under a mile past Josephine Saddle, and Ronnie Sepulveda announced that he was getting blisters in his feet. He was too tired. He was wearing loafers, so it was no wonder he had blisters. And so we decided that I would stay there with him. I had asked Mike Lanou to stay with us because he was my buddy, but they said no, he wanted to go to the top, so he went with the other 2 boys. Lou Burgess originally went with them, so they leave us 2, but he said he'd be back in 20 minutes, which he was, and the 3 of us started back down to our base camp, and it was just about dark at that time. I'm pretty sure that the other 3 boys were probably 30 minutes behind us. It was, because the spot that we had split up was a good 2 hours from the top there, and at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, there was no way they were going to get there. So we went to our base camp. We went to our little camps there. The way it worked out, there was just one from each side was missing. So we essentially spent the night alone, close together but alone. Around 4 o'clock, Lou Burgess came over to where I was sleeping, or trying to sleep. I never did sleep. Let me go back a little bit. I was under this picnic table with the tarp over one side, and at around 9 o'clock it started to rain, and it rained for 3 hours. So being under the picnic table, it kept me dry, and ultimately it kept us alive. At midnight it turned to snow, and by daylight there was every bit of 2 foot of snow where we were. And I'll get back to Lou Burgess and Ryan Spoletta then came to my shelter around 4 o'clock, and so we were huddled there until daylight. And around 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, Lou asked me to make my way down to the lodge to seek out help. And the lodge is a mile away, and the snow was knee deep. I had taken my boots off because we had walked around the snow and trying to start a fire. So when I put my boots back on, my hands were so cold, my fingers would not grab the shoelaces. So I essentially went down the road with the boots flapped open. About halfway down, I see someone coming up. It was John Early, and the first thing he says is, "Well, where's the boys?" Which hit me pretty hard because I know that his son was one of the 3 that were missing. And I looked down and I see he's wearing moccasins. And ultimately, he went to Josephine's Saddle wearing those moccasins, about 2 miles. But so then I took him back up to where our base camp was, and Bonnie Sepulveda and myself then made our way back to the lodge. There was no telephone there, but we found one of the residents had a 2-way radio. They radioed another person in Kansas who radioed back to Tucson, and that's how the authorities were notified. The search really didn't get started. Ultimately, then there around over 700 people were involved in the search, and after 19 days, the search was called off. But one person stayed, Mike Nagy. And on the 19th day, he says, "I'm going up there anyway. I'm going to find those boys." And he got on his horse and went up the trail. And when he got to the point where the boys were, or nearby anyway, the horse stopped and refused to move. And he had a soldier with him, and he asked the soldier to go down and take a look. And he went down and tripped and fell and ended up right next to the 3 boys. That's how they were found. It was assumed they were lost in the snow, but I spent a few years with my brother going over all the evidence, and we don't think they were ever lost in the snow. We believe they came down the trail probably within 30 minutes of us, and at Josephine's Saddle they went left on the Toporo Canyon Road trail instead of to the right. And just past Macbeth Spring, there was a phone line across the trail, and I believe Mike Early probably tripped over with wire, and went down the side about 100 feet or so and broke his leg. His father had told me that he had a broken leg, so that only makes sense. They have a photograph of the fire they built with the rocks around it, which shows they had to be there before the weather. But they had no shelter, so when the rain began and the temperature dropped below zero, it was just too much.
So I know you guys have the book. So can you just tell us a little bit about the books?
Okay, I know that this is a complicated story, and there's so much to tell about it. So that it would be, you could find out everything you want to know in the book. This was written in 2008. When my sister approached me and asked me to write it, I told her, I says, you know, if I write it, it's going to be about 10 pages. Why don't you do it? So I helped her do it. Her name is Kathy Hoopal, and this should answer all your questions then about this tragedy. There's some background story about when I was a kid, and right on through the search, and the epilogue where things are today.
And when this book was wrote?
Well, it was written in 2008. And it can be found on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Summit Hut, many places.
Okay. So if I go to Amazon right now, I can find it?
You can find it, yes.
Okay. So guys, go check it and buy it. It's a good story. Thank you for watching our video. See you next time.